Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Crypto Crayfish. I know it's been a little bit. Work and life has been crazy, but luckily, there's been some movement, but not anything insane in the cryptoverse. And so I'm gonna give you some opinions today. Little tangent. I know that when I'm watching YouTube videos, it drives me crazy when a YouTuber just analyzes and analyzes and analyzes, but never gives you an opinion. At the end of the day, I'm there for an educated opinion, right? I'm there to know what that person thinks. And sometimes I think YouTubers just can spin and spin, argue all different sides, and then you're left just with way too many different options and no real guidance on what actually is predicted to happen. I get it on the YouTuber side because predictions can get you in trouble. People can tell if you're wrong or right about them. But I aim to be a little bit different, offer you some of those. That's why you're here. That's why I watch people. And hopefully, even if I'm wrong, it was valuable input for you figuring out your strategies. So today we'll talk about a bunch of stuff. I do think Bitcoin is going to all-time highs, but there is something I think will happen first that you need to know about. So stick around to find out. Like, subscribe, all those fun things, and we'll get into it. All right, so little update, right? It's been about 2 weeks since we last talked. We had this nice breakout in mid-April from, about mid-80s, and we've hit about mid-90s, okay? And then really for the last little, since, about 10 days, we've just kind of been chopping around in this pretty tight range here, which to me suggests that Bitcoin's kind of getting ready for a more aggressive move. I do think that goes for the stock market as well. You can see that the stock market has had, a ton of volatility. We've talked about this, but recently it's just been kind of coiling here. If you can see, and I think that's really important to kind of notice, that we really, we've been in a tight little range for a little bit. And that's probably why Bitcoin is doing something similar. So I mentioned that I think there's something that has to happen before all-time highs. Let me be clear. I do think all-time highs are coming, right? I am a bull overall. I have looked at the M2 money supply. I'll just pull up the global liquidity, and you can see that it has been going berserk, guys. Hopefully this chart's going to load. Yeah, so you can see this global M2, and it has been absolutely on a tear. And actually, this doesn't show all the way to 2025. Let's see. I'll go to X. Yeah, this guy. This guy's good if you want to follow someone on Twitter. He covers M2 money supply and his relationship to Bitcoin. Honestly, some of his input I don't fully buy. He's not my favorite as far as an analyst, but his charts are good. Just so you know, he does move the charts around to match what's best. So, he's always playing with how much global M2 money supply is offset, right? So he's offsetting it 100 days and then he's offsetting it 80 days, all to match, right? So just so you know, take everything he says with a bit of a grain of salt. For example, you have a March 25th blast off date is what he commented in early March. And then later on he goes into, oh wait, it's a May blast off date. You can see him now. He's saying blast off is right here. We just hit it a week ago. But anyway, the point is to look at this chart, right? And this chart See, this one says April 30 blast off date. Whatever. Don't worry about the blast off date. Just worry about this back part. This is what M2 Money Supply has been doing. And the lag varies, but Bitcoin usually eventually follows Money Supply. You can see historically it does quite well. The correlation offsets are pretty insane, actually, when you look back, 180 days, almost 90%, 1 year, 90%, between 75 and 90%, which is pretty good. And we've got a lot of liquidity coming in, and it's only increasing as the DXY collapses, guys. So if you don't know, the dollar is an investment reserve currency, and as it goes down in its pairing, it allows money supply to go up because a lot of other things are valued in US dollars. And so if that's going down, it's lowering the bottom part of the equation and therefore raising the top part of the equation. So that is what's going on with the dollar. It broke 100, which can be a big deal historically. Let me show you historically here. We can look at some past cycles. So for example, if we want to look at the 2017 cycle, you can see right here. Now it only got to like 103, but as soon as the dollar really broke below 100 and went, all the way down to 80 just in this slide, that's when we got our parabolic run. If you look a few years earlier, we can look at or we could look at the 2021 cycle. That one was kind of interesting. Here's 2021. And if you look here, we got this huge breakdown actually in 2020, and then it led into the parabolic rally that happened in 2021 as it stayed kind of in this lower region. But this was really the breakdown you needed. It, again, was coming from like 103, dropped 100, and then really pushed down into the 80s. And here we're coming from much higher, 110, so it might not go as low, but we just dropped 100. So could be really valuable for global liquidity. And so, as we were talking about, I am a bull. However, I think when you initially break out from a range, it is very rare you just immediately teleport hundreds of percent without check-ins, right? We've talked about this before, and people on Twitter will get all bullish and crazy, but you got to keep your wits about you. So, for example, let's look at last year, right? We had this crazy consolidation here. Lasted a long time, like 8 months. Y'all remember it? It was just lower highs and lower lows. And then finally, near the election, we got this breakout, right? Right here at about $68,000. It ran up to like 73. I can zoom in for you. You can see here, we got the break of 68, ran to 73. It was like an 8% move from the breakout point. And everyone was like, oh, it's going parabolic. It's gone. And what did we do? We actually came back and checked in with the exact breakout price. And actually, we went a little bit lower, 66.5. Okay, about a 10% correction before we got really consistent, strong parabolic move. Okay, now let's look at the parallels. Right here, we've been in this consolidation range. I've drawn some lines for this steep correction part that we've been in the last little bit. Here's the breakout. I've put a line on the breakout at around, $85,000. And we've had what? Let's see our move. From 85, we've had actually a stronger move, almost 13%. Okay. Now, what do I think is going to happen next? Well, remember, it had a 10% correction before going anywhere. A 10% correction from these highs, guys, would put us almost exactly at that breakout point. Made 85. Okay. I think that's the best case scenario. I don't think it's bad to come back and test this. In fact, I think that's good to build bullish structure. But if Bitcoin just teleports higher, it starts to feel a little bit more extended without necessarily creating the base it needs to actually go parabolic. So in my opinion, I think what's most likely in the short term is a little bit of fear, another pullback. Will it be exactly 10%? No, I can guarantee you it won't be exactly 10%. But I think it'll be roughly close to that. It could be a little less. Maybe if you've been following this channel, the bull market support band is a combo of the 20-week simple moving average and the 21-week exponential moving average. It's super useful to track cycles. If you want to read about it, pause here. You can read here. This is Into the Cryptoverse. But our bull market support band is pretty wide right now, but it's ranging between 91.6K and 88K. So I think it's likely we at least check in with that lower band of the bull market support band. You can see back here in that breakout we were just talking about, right? We got the breakout from 68 right here. And that was actually above the bull market support band. It didn't even come back and touch it, right? Because we were already holding it as support. So, but you can see when it initially broke out from being below it, it came back and actually dropped a little bit below it, but really just retested it before going higher. I think that's probably likely. And if anything, I think even a wick down to kind of mid 85s is the best case scenario. Theoretically, you could go down to, I think, low 80s would be my bigger, still bullish, but it's more short-term correction pain to retest this breakout line, right? So if it's in a week or two, 83K, somewhere around there. But I think more likely is probably upper 80s to mid 80s. And then from there, I think you go towards all-time highs. I think all that global liquidity comes in. Maybe some tariff clarity comes in. Today, we got negative GDP number for the U.S. in Q1. It's kind of a big deal, guys. And frankly, the stock market didn't do much on it. It was kind of like, cool, I don't care. And we were expecting some negative numbers, but these were even below expectations. And today came in positive. So I think it's possible we get some short-term fear as some of that starts to get priced in. We've got labor coming in on Friday. And then, in the next, I think, that'll probably happen in the next 2 weeks. If we don't get that correction by Bitcoin in the next 2 weeks, then maybe we are just going higher. But I think some sort of pullback is likely before we really, really cook into May. That's what I think is most likely on my side. On the alts, still be cautious, guys. Even if Bitcoin goes to an all-time high, Bitcoin dominance is ripping, right? It is at a new cycle high today. We talked about this flag, right? You can see it's still drawn from last time we talked about this. We talked about it back here in March before it broke out and said, this is going higher, right? Go back and look at the receipts. I promise you we knew this was going higher. I said, stay out of alts. And that's why you watch this channel, right? To stay safe. At this point, you can have higher returns with less risk in Bitcoin than in altcoins collectively. Maybe there's some altcoins that will outperform, but overall, Bitcoin's taking dominance. And that likely won't change until the Fed stops quantitative tightening, which they haven't done yet, and enters quantitative easing. We probably need more rate cuts, things like that, which could be coming, especially with negative GDP numbers, but we're not there yet. So I will tell you when I'm buying alts, but it is not for a little while. Hopefully that gives you some good guidance. Stay safe out there, protect your capital, and I'll talk to you soon.